and they replaced it with new concrete, and all the old stones were discarded. So I took a piece. It was going to go in the trash anyway. What do they know? So, would it be okay
Yes.
if I leave it here on the table while you
Yes.
teach Chassidus?
No, we're okay. We're wonderful.
So it can do its job.
The stone
And
will
hear
be
words
even-
of Torah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And Esther, it's your house. Is that okay with you? I mean,
Of course it is.
Absolutely.
yeah. No, I have to ask permission. It's not my house.
Of
Yeah.
course.
Okay.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna expose it. I'm gonna leave it right here to.
Bring the energy into our house.
Yeah, and it can do its
You know,
job.
there's a.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, welcome everybody, by the way.
Yeah.
Beautiful thing.
Uh,
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah. Now, are you ready to begin, or
Yeah, I'll begin, but
we have
actually-
another minute?
I'll begin. Let me welcome everybody and let everybody know that we're talking over a few things on the side.
Yeah, and we're almost done. Yeah.
And
Then we'll get to business.
can people hear him? You have your
Let me
microphone
double
right?
check. I will. There's the microphones right here, so it's
So
in the center
we-
of the table and it picks up a lot.
Picks up a lot. Okay, so
So
I want to just say something in regard to that. The question
Please.
was
Yeah.
not a question; it was a statement. It's a beautiful statement that the Torah tells us that when a person walks on the ground and doesn't say words of Torah, the ground, in its own voice, in its silent voice, protests. How dare you walk on me when you are not doing what you were created for and using me as a platform and not a platform for what God wants?
Right.
So the stones cry out. So Mo brought to the table a stone. A stone which is a piece
Yeah.
of debris when they remodeled the Rebbe and the Rebbetzins' house. You're talking about on President Street, yes? The house on President Street?
1304
Yeah.
president.
So he captured a spark that had been tread upon by the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin very much. So this spark, which is sitting on our table, has already absorbed much of Torah and probably is extremely happy. And hopefully tonight we'll make it a little happier
Yeah.
by learning more Torah. You wanted to
Yeah,
say
one more thing. Yeah, just quickly.
Okay.
And I'm sorry if I'm making everybody late. I'll be as quick as possible.
This is Torah. So
It
it's
is
not-
Torah, yeah. Even from Apikoros. In the Maimer Basi Lagani, everybody knows the first part. You know, the 7 generations, bring the Shekhinah back, etc. But not a lot of people talk about a couple pages into the Maimer, where the Friedrich Rebbe writes that there was a certain Tana, and he would take like a bunch of leaves and do a funny dance at people's weddings to make people laugh, to make people besimcha.
Yes.
And some people said to this rabbi, how could a holy big tzaddik, a big rabbi, lower himself and do funny flips and dances, And then they understood when he explained this is called shtus de kedusha. You take something like dancing or being silly and making people laugh, but you do it for holy purposes. That's how you could take shtus and elevate it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the example given in the Maimer is that the place where the Shekhinah was most revealed in the world was in the Mishkan and in the Beis HaMikdash. And there's a commandment that...
Yisroel?
What?
Wasn't it Eretz Yisroel?
Yeah, but in Eretz Yisrael itself, you're
Yeah,
right,
but
in the
even
Holy
with-
Land, but
yeah.
the holiest of the Holy Land was the temple.
Even within Israel, if you want to go to the holiest part of Israel, you would go to the Beis HaMikdash. So there was a commandment that the walls of the Mishkan have to be made from Atzei Shittim, which in English is red acacia wood,
Yes.
which is only grown naturally in North Africa, and it's also been transplanted in variations of it in Australia. And the Friedrich Rebbe explained that the word shittim, for this, the name of this tree in Arabic is a shittim tree, or shita in singular. It comes from the same root word of shtus, which is a hint that one of the ways we could bring the Shekhinah back down is through shtus de kedusha.
Great. One of the ways that we give, both stories are the same, by the way.
Yeah.
The story of the piece of dirt, the piece of stone, and the story of the shtus, of dancing with a stick.
Yeah.
So he's brought some juggling sticks as well. And
So-
put them on the table.
I will.
What kind of juggling?
Someone knows how to juggle.
But I think we should start.
10 years ago, I had an artist. I hired him to make these for me out of red acacia wood, the same wood that was used in the Mishkan.
Oh wow.
And they are percussive instruments.
Yes.
And I used them for many years to do silly dances at weddings in a similar way. Not that I'm some great rabbi that's quoted in the Maimer that did his funny dance 2,000 years ago. I'm just a regular guy. But I did my best.
Thank you very much.
So-
That's really cool.
So tonight we're going to learn a meditation from the Alter Rebbe on the lights of Chanukah, on the theme that Mo has introduced. The lights of Chanukah are made with a common thing called wax or oil. Very low things that don't burn on their own. But when taken in a certain way, they will inflame, not only inflame the area around them, but will inflame our souls. So tonight's mimer is in 3 parts. The first part is an introduction to the Indian of Chanukah in general. The second part is an explanation of that. And the third part is a rather lengthy meditation. So let's begin. Indian Chanukah. Levi, you have a mimer? Take a mimer. There's a few copies down there, aren't there? There were other copies. Okay. Oh, they all came back to me. Yeah, take them. Devor wants to come. Devor likes to sometimes, once in a while, look.
I like to pay
Once in a while,
attention,
sometimes.
maybe.
The Indian Chanukah. Hine kavu hanes b'nevis. The first thing we have to know about Chanukah, there was a war, right? There was an aggression against the Jewish people amongst the Greeks, the Hellenist Jews, the Hellenist Greeks. But we don't celebrate the miracle of the war. We celebrate the miracle of the lights.
Exactly, that's why we light the menorah.
That's why we light the menorah. Masha'enkin b'shar nisim, which is not true of other miracles that we celebrate. For instance, Pesach, we celebrate the going out of Egypt, Mitzrayim. It says we should, Mitzrayim techlu matzahs, you should eat matzahs. And these matzahs are commemoration of a liberation from a very dire strait. We were being persecuted. And with bricks and mortars. Also B'Purim. Yes, we feast, we have physical things that we eat to feel good about the fact that we were freed from the exile and the Galish, which was also physical, as it was in Mitzrayim. We were enslaved with bricks and mortar. In the time of Haman, they wanted to destroy us. And they wanted to plunder the booty of destroying us. Chanukah is not about that. We don't celebrate Chanukah to remember the miracle of having been delivered from the Greeks. We celebrate it with the lights. And in fact, at the time of Chanukah...
But I'm not understanding.
Wait, let me finish your sentence and then see if you understand. At the time of Chanukah, even though the Greeks were oppressing us, Yisroel, and we were settled on our own land, they were not threatening to throw us out of the land. They were not threatening to kill us. We weren't exiled to a foreign place. What was in exile? The Torah was in exile. This was a war between ideologies, the Hellenist ideology and the Torah ideology. As it says, and we will say this starting Chanukah every time we daven, Lashkichem teresecha, that their whole point was not to destroy our bodies, but to cause us to forget the Torah, and to neglect the laws which are God's will. Therefore, we celebrate the Chanukah festival on the lights because of this following pasuk. The pasuk, it says in Mishlei, Ner mitzvah v'Torah or. Since the threat was against the Torah and the performance of mitzvahs and not our lives, we celebrate it through Ner mitzvah, the candle of the mitzvah, and the light of the Torah. Now, Esther, you still have a question?
I didn't understand the whole point of bringing in like the food and the Suda and all of that. What was the point in that?
The point, how we celebrate it by having a great time in the physical. We don't have a feast on Chanukah. We don't celebrate it in Gashmias. We don't eat it with matzah. We don't have these physical things.
Right, but then there's a minhag to eat oily foods, which is
but that's not part of the mitzvah.
It's not a halacha.
Yeah, it's not a halacha. The halacha is all about the lights.
Got it.
The halacha is all about the lights. Yeah. And it says, so the pasuk goes on, Ki ner mitzvah v'Torah or, and this is what we're celebrating. And this is a pasuk from Proverbs. A lantern is a mitzvah, and the Torah is light. And the pasuk concludes, "V'derech chayim techochos musar," and the way of life is a rebuke of musar. In other words, to teach somebody what's the proper way. V'lahavan inyan pasuk zeh, to understand this pasuk, and also the Sefer Dikra, which is the end of the pasuk, which says, "Derech chayim techochos musar." He asked the question, Sorek Bia, we have to understand, Eze derech chayim hu melavad Torah mitzvahs. What does that add, this musar? What is the way of life other than, or besides then, or in addition to Torah and mitzvahs? That's the whole job. So, to begin to understand this. Okay, so let's number one focus. Focus on the candles. The focus is on the lights. And not on the warfare, not on the battle of ideologies per se, but on the illumination. The Indian is this: Kima shehim shel ha-mitzvahs l'nei, that which the Torah in Proverbs compares mitzvahs to a lantern, v'Torah la'or, and Torah to light, who moving is understood as follows: Shekamei shehaner, take a physical light, a physical candle. Nikra al shem hashemen, it's called by the name of the oil. It's an oil lamp. It's a whale fat lamp. They used to use fat of whales, in early America.
That's what we used to do.
It was a big industry, huge industry. Read Moby Dick. Read Moby Dick. All about the whale
Call me
industry.
Yisroel.
Call me Ishmael. Right. All about the fatty industry. there's references there, but that's way on the side, right? Okay, so it's an oil lamp. It's a wax lamp, right? So the lantern is always called by the name of the fuel. As our sages say in the Gemara, Ner shel shemen, the lantern of wax, of oil, or the lantern of wax. Why do we call it a wax lantern? Wax doesn't have any fire. Oil doesn't have any fire. On the contrary, if you poured oil, if you had a flame, what would happen? And here's a question at the table, or anyone wants to answer.
I know.
What would happen if you poured gasoline on a flame?
It'll
Make it bigger.
What would happen if you poured olive oil on a flame?
It will,
Pour it out.
It would go out. Absolutely.
Why?
Make it go.
Because it's not, the word in English, flammable. You can't light
only
olive
if it goes
oil.
on the side.
No,
If it goes like
try it.
Why do you use olive oil?
Try it.
Doing an experiment right now.
Yet, the lantern that we use is usually with olive oil, fine olive oil. What makes this trick work is the wick in the
Makes it
oil
loud. It makes it
and
longer.
the touch. In all cases, we're going to touch it with a flame. We're going to touch the gasoline with a flame. We're going to touch the olive oil with a flame. But the fact that the oil and the wick are together is the secret, a big secret. In fact, that's why we call the lantern an oil lantern, or kerosene. Well, kerosene is flammable. An olive oil lantern, or wax. But wax is a good example. You all have candles of wax. Most people do. You can't light wax. Try it
No, you
sometime, right? And so, in the fact, if you poured oil on the lantern, it extinguishes it, and it just falls within it, absorbs it. Nevertheless, and here's the trick, the menu from this wax and the oil together, this mixture creates a flame. Shelheves ha'or, a flame of light, hanefes b'pesila, which grabs onto the wick. So now we have a third component here. We have the fuel, in this case an inflammable fuel, olive oil. We have the wick, and we have the lantern. We have the oil, and we have that's the fuel, and we have the wick, and we're sparking it. But it begins with the two, oil and the wick. So we have a wick, and only through the wick does it begin to burn. Does the fire have a grasp, a hold on the wick? Shemen, from a little bit of light, a little bit of olive. In fact, if you pour a lot of oil, it'll go out. So the oil is drawn into the wick. This is a mashal, a metaphor, right, which we'll explain in a minute what it means. Because we see when the oil is exhausted, there's no more oil. The light goes out. Right? So Chocha Mamish Hu Mitzvahs. This was a Ner Mitzvah, right? Ner Mitzvah V'Torah, or a lantern is a mitzvah. So similarly, mitzvahs. Agam Shehu Ratzon HaMelech, even though mitzvahs are the will of the king, Bli Shum Tam Vadas, we don't really understand the reasons behind any mitzvah, even those which appear reasonable. Ve'ein Bo Shum HaSoga, there's no understanding. So it's like wax. It doesn't show any kind of ability to be on fire. The mitzvah, the plain thing of the mitzvah that you're dealing with. You look at a box of tefillin, you look at a candle, it doesn't show anything about the will of God. The Kol Mokim, nevertheless, Val Yoda, through this vehicle, this candle, this box of leather, Nimshek v'nisgala ora chokmah, that's where God's wisdom is revealed. Right? That's what has God done. He's put his will and his wisdom into the Torah, and the Torah tells us what we're supposed to do with a piece of rock, what we're supposed to do with a acacia wood. They're all meant to be elevated. They're all meant to be, well, let's not talk about elevated yet. They're all meant to be kalim, vessels for God's will. And when the two come together, when the oil and the wax comes together, oil, is shemen. Shemen is the number 8, shmini, indicating a very transcendent and high level. The highest levels of God, the oil, get inflamed, not on their own, but when they join with the lowest. And the lowest, that's generally what mitzvahs are. So Chocha Mamish Hu Mitzvahs, Hagam Shehu Ratzon HaMelech, even though it's the will of the king without any reason and understanding, Ve'ein Bo Shum HaSoga, and there's no grasp in our minds of what they're really about. V'Kol Mokim, nevertheless, Mimenev Al Yoda, what from them and through them, Nimshik v'Nzagala Ora Chochma. The wisdom of God is revealed, and this is Zu Torah, Shebal Peh, which is the oral Torah. Deraisim Echokma Nafkes, because the oral Torah, the Torah in general, but particularly the oral Torah, the principle is the lower it can come down, the higher is its source. The Chokma v'Havana v'Torah, because wisdom and understanding in the Torah, Shebal Peh, and the oral Torah, Hurak lahavan lahasik pirish v'tama mitzvahs. The whole purpose of learning the oral Torah is it's an explication of what God wants. Kol Masechta l'fi inyana, every Masechta according to its topic. This is the intro. For a few more lines, we'll have a little bit more explanation of this.
So
I'm just going to pause for a minute. Question.
I'm just want to summarize.
Yeah.
He's introducing the concept of the wick and the oil coming together, and how those two things are necessary for a flame, right? You need like the power source, the fuel, and you need with what is the power source going to be channeled, right?
Yep.
Which is the wick, right?
Exactly.
As that
That's
pretty much what you
that's
just
a good
said.
summary. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. And the concept.
As much as you think
No,
I'm
it's good.
paying
And
attention.
the innerness of it is that
I know, I've learned enough.
the innerness of it is that the rock that Mo put on the table doesn't show you any. It looks dumb. It can't speak. It has no voice. But yet it does have a voice. It's a voice that you have to cultivate an ear to listen to, and an eye to see, which we will in a few minutes. So the explanation of this thing in specific in terms of service of God. We talked about the metaphor. Let's talk about how it does apply to us. I should have shared something here. In the Kasiv, it's written. It's written about Aaron HaKohen. Amongst the services that Aaron HaKohen did in the Beis HaMikdash was the arrangement and the lighting of the lights every day. B'boike, each and every morning, Behetivo Eseneres, he would arrange the lights, and he would also offer incense, Yaktirenu. And Bahalois, and then the lights would, and then afterwards, after he arranged them, the flame would go up. Bahalois Aaron Eseneres, and when the lights went up through the vehicle of Aaron the Kohen, Bein Harambayim Yaktirenu, that was in the evening, he lit them, he fixed them during the day, and he lit them up at night, and he also offered incense. So we are introducing here two paths of service. One, the path of arranging, which is going to ultimately bring a flame up above, and then something is going to come down through that work that we did down here below. So you got two directions. In the morning he would arrange them, and in the evening they would go up.
What's today's Sefer Mitzvahs, right?
Yep.
Hmm.
Lahav and lama gabe b'bayker kasi b'heitivu. Now, why does it say in the morning he arranged them? U b'bein harbayim b'halois. And in the evening they went up. So I think it's kind of obvious that, well, nighttime is the time you need some illumination. And nighttime, of course, through all of Chassidus, is a mushal for galus, a mushal for exile. So, a just short word of how we apply this to the story of Chanukah. This is outside the Mimer. Basically, the Hellenists, we were in a ideological exile, very similar to today and pretty much almost every epoch that's been ruled by the non-Torah perspective, and we call that non-Torah perspective galus. And then we equate that galus with night, darkness, a certain amount of darkness. And the crack in the darkness, how the light gets in, is through a crack. It has to be broken. Why in the morning does he arrange them, and in the evening they go up? So Hina, Knesset Yisroel, Mokem Neshomis Yisroel, the place that's called the gathering place of all the Jewish souls, Knesset Yisroel, which is the place in the spiritual worlds which is the source of all Jewish souls, Nikad B'Shem Menorah. It's called a menorah. Why is it called a menorah? You know a certain halacha about the menorah. The menorah had to be hammered out of one piece of gold. It wasn't screwed together, made together from parts. Even though it shows parts, 7 or 8, 7 in the Beis Hamikdash, 8 in Chanukah, it shows its parts, but all of them are at root hewn out of one glob of gold. So the menorah is miksha, it's hammered out from one glob of gold. And this is like the Jewish people. We. Shekol Yisroel heim ba'aktus. We in our source are one. V'hi mishalechas l'shevaneros, and we are divided as we come out from that soul root into 7. These are the 7 shepherds. Hiderakrat yesh shishim riboy, and then they come into further detail until there are 600,000 of them, 600,000 general sparks, nitzutzis klalis, and shekol nitzis mischalek l'shishim riboy nitzutzis pratius, and all of them divide into 600,000, and that's 600 billion, by the way, that number. And it goes on and on and on. But the point is, all the divisions are rooted in singularity. So all the Knesset Yisroel, are rooted in the singularity. Kamavoda in Tanya is written, explained in chapter 37 of the Tanya. Medera klal nichlala b'shivin nefesh, and in a general way, we're divided into the 70 souls that went down to Egypt. There's
70?
another 70.
70.
70, so just 10 times 7.
What's
So
the
if
some people-
1 comes into 7, 7 times 10, and then 7 into 10, into 100, into 1,000, 10,000, etc., etc. All rooted in the Chevra, the 7 shepherds, who are the root, the first expression of the root.
Who are the 7 shepherds? It's like David, Shlomo.
David,
It's like the
keep
Ushpizim?
going. Yeah. Avram, Yitzchak, Yaakov, David, Shlomo, Moshe, Aaron, did I say Aaron? Yeah. These are the 7 shepherds. And these are particular, okay?
Well, there were 7 candles on the menorah in the Beis
7
Hamikdash.
candles on the menorah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Huh.
So these are called Shevaneros, the 7 candles. In Aaron Shushbin Matanisa, Aaron, who lights them, he's one of them, but he lights them, he's called the matron of the queen, the one who accompanies the queen. The queen in the language of Kabbalah is Malchus. Malchus is the bottom source, the queen, which gives rise to all the flows down below. So he is the one who's bringing down flow into the menorah and using that menorah to light up
Malchus.
the world. Light up the world. Malchus, God's kingdom. This is Aaron a Kohen. He's a Kohen Lakel Elyon. He's a Kohen to the supernal God, meaning he's bringing the transcendent levels of God into reality in the Holy Temple. That's what the temple does. The temple is the intermediary between the transcendent world and the physical world, and it
The
bridges the
Kaddish
gap.
HaKadoshim, there's no space, physical space for the for
Yeah.
the
For
what's
the
it
hour.
called? The Aron.
Right. It manifests both things.
It was physicality
It
and
had
spirituality.
physicality, measure, and then it was beyond measure at the
Right.
same time.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the deal. Transcended into immanent.
Mm-hmm.
Yehine Aaron Shushvinu D'Matanisi, right? We said that? And he is the source of drawing down in his mashpiyim. He draws down God into Knesset Yisroel. Sheyero bar ha'ava l'slavit olav yisborach, in order to kindle our love. So, first thing to contemplate, and we'll get now into the deeper part of the meditation, is when we look at these lights. We titled this class, Listen to the Lights. The lights have a story. And they have to tell, and we have to listen to the story they're telling. The story that they're telling is a story of unity that manifests itself in diversity, but this diversity is rich with God's singularity. And it's not the shamash. It's the fact that the menorah itself is all hewn of one lump of gold. And this creates 7 branches, right? And we'll get to the lights particularly in a few minutes. But the lights are the emblem here, the metaphor for, illumination. We call the person's enlightened, right? An enlightened person is one who has wisdom. And one who has wisdom is enabled to inform his or her thought, speech, and deed with that wisdom.
Ideally.
Well, if you have it, you can. Whether you do it or not is right. But you have it. And that's what Aaron does, and that's what the lights do. They're mashpiyim godliness into the Knesset Yisrael. Shiariru, that the Jewish people should be illuminated. So that's the first thing to meditate upon. When you're supposed to spend a good half hour, if not more, sitting with the lights quietly before you go on your journeys to whatever parties or whatever you're going on to. And it was the Rabbi actually who coined, or at least publicized, this expression, listen to the lights. And we'll see, because this is not a thought process. It's not an intellectual process.
It's emotional.
It's an ear process. An ear process. It's a listening, opening up. As the line you said goes. There needs to be an opening up, a crack, for the light to get through. And the crack's not a crack in the brain. The crack's in the ear, which is opening up and connecting to the heart. One of the playing the Pashetlach in Shema Yisroel, it says, "Hear, O Israel," right? And it's understood, and it's not just in Chassidus, but in Nigla, that Shema means to understand. To take, and understanding is Bina, and the Zohar tells us Bina is the heart, connected with the heart. So listening connects with the heart. Shema, listen to the light.
It's like when my mother tells me you're not listening. I'm either, do I hear her or am I listening to her? Right? Right, Esther. You know how to, when you discipline your children, you're not listening to me, right? You're not following my instructions, or you're not hearing me. You actually physically just can't hear
in
me.
Yiddish, there's a word for it. The difference between her and der her.
Right.
Here is I hear you, but I haven't listened. Which way did you go? Listening is the deeper.
There's a theme going from last week to this week.
Huh?
Yeah.
Okay.
Listening, which is the deeper? Listening or hearing in your mother's terminology?
Listening. Because I'm actually, I'm listening to my mother. I'm listening to what she has to say, right?
Where you take it,
It's
to
like-
heart.
Or it's like when you talk to a friend or something and they say, "I hear you," and you're like,
I hear
Were you listening?
"No, exactly."
Exactly, right. So listen to the
I don't know
light.
if you heard what I said.
Exactly.
So you got to listen to the light, because the lights are mashpiyim alakusei yisborach. They're drawing down godliness into the Jewish people. Shiya'iru, that the Jewish people, the soul of the Jewish people, each one of us, should be illuminated, be'or ha'ava, with the light of love, lehislav be'lov yisborach, to be inflamed unto God, be'kloisa nefesh, with expiration of the soul. That's what the lights do. They burn to the point of expiration. Shel heves ha'olam ha'elah. And this is expression from when the avodah, when Aaron HaKohen lit the lights, the Torah says that, or Rashi says, in Parshas B'Halasecha, that the way he lit it was in a manner that just until they would be able to rise on their own. So it's transferring an energy of a capability, a potency to oneself through the Chanukah lights and through the lights of the Mishkan. Not that we don't, Aaron HaKohen is not going to stand with us all day and all night. His job is just to touch our holy spark, our deep spark, so that it inflames on its own. Well, the Kaya mitzvahs Yahavta, in order that we can actually fulfill the mitzvah of Yahavta, as Hashem Elokecha, Shemekablim Aleihim B'Krishma, which we take upon ourselves in Krishma, again Shema. If we really listen, if we really hear, der Herr, if we really bring it into our hearts.
Der Herr is to listen and Herr is to hear.
There is the deep one. Here is what
I heard
the
you.
sound went into my ear and my eardrum, right? Sometimes people use it the opposite way. I hear you. I mean, I get you. Sometimes, but it's the deep hearing. Mekabla Malayim Krishna, which we should take upon ourselves in Krishna. Every time we say this word Shema. Another beautiful meditation, not written here, but I saw recently, is Shema. Each letter, Shin Mem Ayin, is Su'u Meiron Einechem. Lift up to the heights your eyes and look. Look and listen. Kach be'emes lamitoy tekua belev. In order that the flow that's coming down through these lights should be lasting in your heart, fixed in your heart, kol echad v'echad, in each and every Jewish person, Yisroel. She'odem etzad atzmoi, the person on his own or her own, me'achashehu megushon, since a person is a physical entity, umalubish b'inyanim gashmim, and dressed up also in everything physical on you and around you. You need help from Hashem. You need the illumination from above. So we open ourselves up from below. We listen. We make a crack in ourselves, open ourselves up, and God fills it like Aaron HaKohen when he lights the lights from above to below. That's the help that we get from God from above to below. So now we've explained. We're raising up the lights and arranging. We have to bring up the lights, bring up ourselves, open up ourselves, and that's the few minutes, half hour, whatever
in the morning davening.
In the morning davening, and come Thursday night, sitting by the candles for a half hour, just doing nothing but opening up a crack for the light to get in. Just opening it up.
What is that? I'm trying to understand what that means in relation to like sitting in front of the Chanukah licht. Like,
because listening is you're not thinking.
Like they're already
Don't
lit,
think about it.
right? Are you talking about like the experience of
The
the
experience
candles?
of the candles.
Okay.
The experience of the candles. Let it be a meditative, contemplative, open, silent experience rather than a intellectual experience.
Okay.
There are actual even on Chabad.org or
Meditations.
there's like intentional things like the first night is about being yachid, being one, and like each candle represents another thing to connect to. Yeah.
Very nice.
All right, so now we're going to delve into a meditation that the Alter Rebbe has put on the table for us. And let me just again take a minute looking at what's going on. A lot of people are watching, no one's asking. Any comments,
No.
questions? Okay,
No questions.
We'll move right along, okay?
I'm here.
You're here, I got you.
We were wondering because there were no questions yet. So so sweet. I love your questions. I didn't mean that in a facetious way.
She's good with
No, I
it.
meant that in a.
She gets it.
Very
Okay, good.
sweet way. So,
I
Okay,
did.
yeah.
I love her questions.
She adds so much valuable.
okay, so on this one,
So
I mean,
human
let's try to, if we can, I have to keep my eyes open because I have to read here. But I can imagine, I'll try to. But if you're not reading, if you don't have a page here, you can close your eyes, or at least open your ears, and follow along here. What I'm going to try to do here is just go with the flow. And if the questions arise, just let them fly by you, and you can get onto the
Okay.
questions later. Okay.
Gotcha.
Okay. So the meditation that the Alter Rebbe puts on the table, okay, is this, that it says first of all, and this is the one introductory remark he makes, that though there in the Beis Hamikdash, when we offered our offerings on the altar, a fire came down from above, a flame in the shape of a lion, and took our offerings up. And the Chazal say, even though that's true, it's a mitzvah to bring yourself, your own fire, your own offering. So we're bringing our offering, we're lighting the lights, and we're sitting by the lights, and we're watching the lights go up. So, and thinking about the following. There's a love that can be aroused in a person. There's a love that can be aroused in a person from contemplating the worlds. How the worlds are mebichinas malchusa yisborach, they come from God's kingship. Shehu melech gadol, he's a great king, v'neira, and an awesome king. Al kol ha'olam yisraelim v'tachtonim, over all the worlds. Think about that vastness. Imagine that vastness. V'chol tzavor hashamayim l'cham mishtachavim, and all hosts of heaven bow down to him. Ve'elos alafin v'riber avavim kadmohi, and thousands upon thousands and tens upon thousands of created entities stand in front of him. Kemavor, the Gemara is explained in the Gemara and in the Zohar. The Bir Inim Ribo Oilamis, the Gadluso, explaining the multiplicity of worlds and their greatness. Val derech zeh tiknu Chazal, and to help us with this meditation, our sages have arranged Lamer to say, and the first thing we say is Shema Yisroel. Listen. Listen. Open up your ears. Or Su'u Meromenechem, lift up your eyes. But lift up. Get out of yourself. Try to think of yourself kind of just rising like a flame out of yourself. And the Chazal have said that we should say Baruch Shem Kavod Malchusa Le'elam Va'ed before we say V'ahavta. We should acknowledge the infinity of God's kingdom and the infinity of his kingship before we say, and you should love. Because on Aymanim, we say the following: Hashem is Yochid, he is singular. Chei Olamim Melech, and all the life of the worlds is his kingship. And he is Meshubach L'for Adeyad, he is praiseworthy infinitely, and we praise his great name, Shemei Gadol. But he himself is Yochid. All this multiplicity that we see in front of us, all this stuff, is only his kingship. And he alone, from which all this kingship comes, is singular, Yochid. L'mayla mibechinas echad, higher than echad. Echad is Aleph, Ches, Daled. Ches is 8, and Daled is 4. Aleph is 1. The meditation on echad is, he is 1, Aleph, in the 7 heavens and the earth, which is 8, and in Dalet in the 4 directions. So the heavens and the earth reveal his glory, but they don't reveal his essence, which his essence is singular, indivisible. He's one in the multiplicity of heaven and earth, and in the 4 directions of the world. All the worlds, the higher ones and the lower ones, they don't take any place in front of him. And everything that we see and everything beyond what we see with the greatest, deepest telescopes that we have is like nothing. The infinite myriad of the physical universe is nothing compared to the infinite myriad of the spiritual energies behind him, which are all nothing compared to him alone. And considered like nothing. And there is, in fact, nothing besides him. We call him Echad, one, when we think about how he is involved with the worlds. Aval Yochid, singular, he's alone, on his own. And he alone is, and he's not in the realm of limitations at all, of worlds at all. The whole life force and diversity of the worlds is only from his sphere of Malchus, kingship. Pirish, the whole vitality of worlds with which he enlivens all the worlds, and brings them into being, upper and lower worlds, he's only because a manifestation of his kingship, and everything is receiving life force only from a distant sphere, 10 spheres out, and the spheres themselves are only embodiments, extensions of himself. Vavi Yisei Melech Aleihim, and he's king over them. V'chein Mashem Meshubach Mefor, and that which we praise him in davening. Dahainu Hashevach Machmas Shemasigim Gudulosei. It's because we praise the greatness of him. Hu al de'ad, and his greatness is infinite. Ki Gudulosei and Cheker, the pasuk says, to his greatness there's no searching, there's no end to it. And when you go higher and higher, it's praise after praise after praise, and you never reach him, because he's awesomely beyond anything that can be reached. And you go higher and higher and higher, and imagining. Go in your mind to planet Mars. Go from planet Mars to the end of the physical universe. Go from the end of the physical universe to the boundary between the spiritual and physical, and realize that the spiritual is also just an emanation from him. Ad in kates, without any limit. Vein taklis, and there's no end to it. Ve'akol be'av shemei hagodol, and all of it is just from his name, his expression. V'leis nikras shemei u'malchusi aleihim bilvad, just the name. Who ve'einu yochel l'negea b'lechinas atzmusi, and we are not able to touch his essence at all. Ki leis machshav defisabeh, as the pasuk says, no thought can grasp him. But where can you grasp him? B'ra'usa d'liba. This is not written in the Bible, but it's written in the will of the heart, in the openness of the heart to experience that which is beyond intellectual experience.
So would you
No
say?
thought can grasp it.
Okay, good.
Shehu Yachid Miyuchid, because he's singular. V'niskav Shemei Lavado, and his name belongs up to himself, and is only an expression of himself. Malchusecha Malchus Kol Olamim. We say this every day. Your kingdom is the kingdom of all worlds. And this is what it says in the Gemara. In the place She'ata Motzei Gedolosei, where will you find his greatness? In other words, where is his greatness expressed? Shom Ata Motzei Anvasnusa, where he lowers himself. He lowers himself to create what we call great. It says in Tillim, he lowers himself into the heavens and the earth, to be seen in the heavens and the earth. Because from him himself, all of the creation is considered like a lowering, a come down, and a humility, to lower himself. As we say in davening, he upholds those who are fallen, and he heals the sick. And he stands up those who are lowered and down. And all of his kingdom is called the earth. Because like this world is very low. Because it came from a place of very high holiness, and of which he is the king, and his name is over all of it. And therefore, having thought or meditated, contemplated those things which we just said, Zois Yovim, this is Lashon Havana. Havana is Bina. Bina is contemplation, meditation. Everyone will mavin that kol yetzir besume aliboy, that everything that's formed can put upon its heart, v'yachiv daite, and broaden its mind, v'gelusa yizborach, in contemplating the greatness of Hashem, v'niflois, and the wondrousness of his deeds, and his riba ha'olamis, ad ein cheker, the multiplicity of worlds without any end. Hina, if you do that, yaskil shezeho ambasnusa, you'll come to realize that all of this is his loweredness. The ein erech alav, and is not comparable to him at all. She'ena v'gera almin klal, he's not in the boundary of worlds at all. V'hu shavar umash v'kodem v'gadol, and he's the one for whom there is no difference between large and small, many and singular. It's all one. Umamela, if a person will meditate upon this, tislahe to the slahav nefesh b'lev, then his soul and heart will be inflamed, la'or ba'ol ha'ava, in the light of love of God, b'chol nafshecha, with all of one's soul, mamish, lotzeitz megeda oilam, is to go out from the limitations of worlds, as David HaMelech says, that I don't desire anything at all in this world, I only desire you. Sha'are olavavi, that my strength and my heart expire to you. That's the end of the meditation.
Can this apply to non-Jews as well?
Sure.
And also, are we to say that now, based off of this, that love is more about curiosity?
If you equate curiosity with yearning for something, that feeling something missing and wanting something more, yes, if that's what you mean by curiosity. Curiosity is usually like that, right? I'm curious about something. There's something
Right.
that's...
You take interest.
You take interest in it. You take interest in it. There's something that attracts you to it.
Because it's like, then how do you love something that you don't know? The love is really...
Yeah, well, that's, if you put it that way...
Because no matter how much you know about Hashem, you still don't know Him.
Remember, this is not about das. This is not about seichel.
Okay.
This is about heart. Like the flame wants to leave the wick. It has no idea where it's going. But its nature is to leave the wick. The root cause of it wanting to leave the wick is because its source is something that it wants to cling to and reunite with. You may not know that or think about that intellectually, but any yearning you have is a yearning for something beyond you with which you want to connect. Whether you know what it is or not, you're going for it. And sometimes you don't get to know what it is until you touch it. And then that creates bigger and deeper yearnings. So by definition, the yearning and the curiosity is for what you don't know. Otherwise, why are you curious?
Right.
You just have a feeling that there's something else.
Somebody asked a question.
Yeah.
Is this what you think about to bring the fire up, or when bringing the fire down?
Good question. This is bringing the fire up.
Right.
This
That's
is
what I answered,
releasing, expanding, opening up. We keep using this line from Leonard Cohen, right? Opening up a crack so the light can get in.
Right.
And then the coming down is when the light starts pouring down into your soul. But the beginning of it, remember, this is all, as you said, now we're talking intellect, back in the mimer, this is all a preparation for V'ahavta. The whole Birchas Krishna and Shema Yisroel. Listen, open your ear to the oneness of God. The oneness of God is in that pasuk is echad. That all of this multiplicity is nothing compared to Him. And this, that I listen to that and hear that and feel it, creates that I can say with all honesty, and I will love God, and I love God, V'ahavta. You know, the question is that V'ahavta can be taken as a commandment, or it can be taken as a result. V'ahavta, you should love the Lord. And Chassidus says, you can't command somebody to love. But if you meditate
And you will love.
and contemplate,
It's like that.
you will love. It will happen automatically. And you will love.
Isn't it backwards in biblical Hebrew? You love the Lord, not anymore.
What do you mean?
The future's
So let's move on. Unless you let's move on. Any other comments out there?
I don't know what I'm talking about.
No, that's what we have for right now.
Okay, fine.
No,
Okay.
you're right. And you will.
Okay.
I don't know what you're trying to say.
Yeah, I don't know.
What are you saying in biblical Hebrew? It should be V'ahavta
You know,
es Hashem?
when you put the vav, it switches tenses.
Oh, okay.
What
He's saying
Grammatically.
what was the question?
Maybe it's literal.
What would Levi? Nobody can
he
hear
was
him.
making a statement. He wasn't saying a question. He was saying
no,
that in Hebrew. I'm just clarifying what he's
Does
saying.
if it makes sense
Right.
to you, go ahead and talk.
I don't know.
He's saying that in Hebrew, right? In English, you say "and you will love," right? But in Hebrew, the grammar, if you break up each letter and what it goes to, it's V'ahavta, and love you will. It's more like that. Like it's
Right.
that's basically what you were saying.
Grammar is different, but if you really are going to analyze it like that, it's more "and give you will."
Well, how about this? Let me suggest something. If this next very line, the Alter Rebbe is going to analyze it.
Let's go.
Interesting that you guys
Yalla.
brought it up.
Okay.
We're
Here's what he
into.
says, right?
But
We're
I do
listening.
think that if you're analyzing it that way, you have to say "and give you will," not "love you will," but "give."
V'zehu
It's Ahavas
v'ahavta.
to love, right?
This is
I mean,
what it
Ahavas to
means.
give.
I'm quoting, I'm reading. V'zehu v'ahavta es Hashem Elokecha. This is what it means, and you should love or will love God, right? Ki ava b'shorish avo. The word love is from this root word avo, which means to desire. Desire. So that's how we take it, that if you do this meditation, you will desire, you will want to cling to the living God. The ava is meshorish ava, shehu meloshin chefetz, v'ratzon, desire and will. You will have cultivated a wanting, a desire to come close to that which is infinite. And, Seichel might tell you, well, I can never understand it, so what's the point? The heart says, that's exactly the point. That's exactly the point. Because it's infinite, no thought can grasp him. That's right, no thought can grasp him. My heart sings, David Amela says, my heart desires your panemius, because that's what the heart wants. And this is what he says. The depth of the heart, it's rooted in the depth of one's heart, that Hashem will be your God. And that you will cling to him, mamash. And this answers your question. This is the arousal from below, the halos aneros, the raising up of the lights.
Right.
Yochel love, so that you will cause a descent to come down, or a love from above. Right? This is you come to this over and over again. The arousal from below affects an arousal from above. So one has to put oneself in a position of opening up your ear. Opening up your ear. And when you open up your ear, God will speak into it. The love from above. Lahagdil medoros eshin. That will cause, right? He lights the lights. Aron HaKoyen, from top to bottom, right? He puts his lighter into the candles from top to bottom. And that causes lahagdil medoros esa'ava beliboy. Yoiser mikadei. Koyach anushe. And this will cause, all these words, this will cause a great torch of flaming fire to be lit in your heart more than you could normally bear. More than a rational person can bear.
So that's what I wanted to comment on, because it's interesting that, first of all, he's talking about, so that you want to be close to Hashem, and you can get lost there. But aside from that, it's interesting how we bring up Aaron HaKohen, who's the one who teaches us this, and then it was his sons who teach us the whole Indian of Klais HaNefesh and what not to do.
Right.
So how do you find, not that I would be on that level of Klais HaNefesh, but how do you find that balance of not drifting off into the abyss?
Well, first of all, it's even I've learned about this, that you can look at this two ways. The normal way is they went beyond what they should have done, and they were punished for it. A deeper way is that they were so infused that and we'll come back to the negative way, that they were so infused. I mean, they were the sons of Aaron. They were sons who were kindled, so to speak.
Right.
If you want to say he's to blame, he sparked their fire, right? And their only blame, if you're going to blame them, is that they didn't realize the second half of the words in Sefer Yetzirah. Well, Sefer Yetzirah wasn't published yet. All right. Published Sefer, but what's the second half? Im rotz libo. If your heart runs out, shuv le'echad, come back, because God's will is in the mitzvahs. God's will is not in the ecstatic experience of Him, but the ecstatic experience of Him has to be the motivator if you're really going to engage with Torah and mitzvahs in a loving and intense way. Otherwise, you won't be engaged. So, yes, they were infused and they went high, but the sin was that they didn't realize there was too much ego in that, too much selfishness in that. Selflessness is really the name of the game.
I feel like it's a catch-22. You can't really win.
Catch-23?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
catch-22.
You
can't really win.
Wait a minute.
You go.
I don't know.
Did I correctly catch 23?
Yeah, but this is just an extension of Catch-22.
It's like Lamaila
It's
Minha
like a mile and a
catch-22.
Catch-22.
Exactly.
Exactly, right? But you
Thank you.
can win. The way to win is if Chesed is infinite reaching out, and Gevurah is infinite constraint, you can become a Yisroel, a Tiferes, who knows how to balance the two, knows when to run, knows when to hide, knows when to play his cards, and knows when to keep them on the table. You can balance the two, and that's our job. That's our job. As it says that the whole world was created to be settled, not for ecstasy, but for settledness. But settledness without ecstasy, or let's make a bet on a more common sort of word that we learn in Torah, that the settledness, meaning doing the mitzvahs without the kavanah, without the heart, is like a body without a soul. So you have to do both. You have to meld the two.
Yeah, but you can't wait. This is what I mean by a catch.
Oh,
Sorry.
One second, Lana.
But this is what I mean by a catch-22. You can't, if you're not feeling it, you can't wait until you feel it to do it.
Could. Fine. But that doesn't mean you give up on feeling it. Ma'aseh hu ha'ikar. That's the bein. Ma'aseh hu ha'ikar.
Right.
But to do the mitzvahs only because you're commanded to, I mean, on the one hand, it's a great level, but on the other hand, it runs the danger of two things. Either the mitzvahs are done just,
Right.
it's like trampled under your feet, or you don't do them anymore because you've lost the sense of meaning in them. You've got to keep grasping onto the meaning. And the meaning is in the meditation of the lights. The meaning is acknowledging, number one, that there is a giver of life force that's way beyond our ability to grasp him. We call him him because we're talking about the giver. And we,
Right.
who are the receivers, have a vehicle for receiving that. And that's our heart. Re'usa deliba, what we just talked about. Our brain's important, right? Moyach shalat ala lev. But the lev isn't interesting. Lev is lamed beis. In fact, this mimer
20,
started on page
22.
lamed beis.
There's our catch
32.
22.
32,
Yeah.
which is the heart.
Right.
Which is the heart. And this is not something I made up. It's it's brought not from this particular mimer, but the mimer. Watch, when is it escaping at the moment? On page Lamed Beis, that Tzemach Tzedek comments. Notice that this mimer is on page.
Oh, it's
Lamed
on like
Beis.
it's in Torah or something,
Yeah,
Likutei Torah or something like that.
it's
Yeah.
it's in the Likutei Torah. Just forgetting at the moment which
I
one
can
it is.
open it up.
Yeah, but you want to open it
There
up?
you go. It's one or the other. It's in Likutei
We're
Torah.
going to look at page Lamed Beis and Likutei Torah for a minute, because on that the Tzemach Tzedek has made a note in the back of the book. Note that this is the heart. This is the
I
heart.
opened up to Lamed Dalet, very close.
This is the
There
heart.
you go.
What is it?
It's Basi Lagani.
Oh.
No, it's Achalti Ari Im Devashi. Like, what is it? Well, Basi Lagani is the page before.
You're in Lamed Gimel.
No,
You're
it's just
in
Lamed
Lamed
Beis.
That's not.
Maybe
it.
it's in Torah.
So forget it. No, it might be somewhere else. But he
Is
could.
it in Tanya?
Maybe someone out
I
there
think it's in
knows.
Tanya.
Maybe
I
it's
don't
in
think
Tanya.
so.
We'll
Is it
find it. We'll get back to you on that. It could be page. Oh, it's Perek Lamed Beis.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I
Perek Lamed Beis. But there is a
Yinei
minor.
Al Yadei.
There
talks
is
about Ahavas Yisroel.
Ahavas Yisroel. But there is a minor, and I'll research it, which is on page Lamed Beis of something which the Tzemach Tzedek has that remark. The point is that it's the heart. If you abandon the heart and just try to understand everything, it's not going to give us. It's not going to give us the feeling.
It's what's called a symbiotic relationship.
gonna
You
be
can't
different.
have one without the other.
Just as God is beyond understanding, so we have to apprehend Him in a part of ourselves which touches that which is beyond understanding. The heart.
When the heart runs.
Yeah,
you
I-
turn
Is
the
this one?
May I ask a question that maybe it's, I don't know, foolish on my part, but here we're going through so much description on the candles going up and what we're supposed to look at it and meditate on as they go up or as they come down, and yet that's juxtaposed with Shema, which is all about hearing.
Is it?
You don't hear the candles, you see the candles. Why
No, but that's
is it
why.
that
That's why.
the candles are juxtaposed with Shema and hearing?
Because we have to get this because this is the deep part of what we're saying. This is what the Rebbe always said, listen to the lights.
Listen, what?
Listen to the lights.
Right.
They have a story to tell. listen to the lights. This is the language of the Rebbe. I don't know really whether it was original to the Rebbe, originated with him, or has a deeper, more historical source. But this was his watchword by the Chanukah lights. Listen to the lights. So of course we stand there, we sit there and we look at it. But what story are they telling? Well, they're telling a story of a multiplicity that's hewn from a singularity. The very 7 or 8 branches of them all are branches of a singular hewn block of gold.
Can I tell you something really?
Which is, let me just a minute,
Yeah.
which is, we said earlier, that singular source is called Knesset Yisroel Shelamayla, the source of the Jewish people above, which is the sphere of Malchus. So listen to that. Listen to the lights being an illumination of 7, which is the root of creation, but hewn from singularity, and ponder the singularity, which is the source of everything. Now, that source of everything is not comprehensible. It's not graspable. Lois not shafet tefisave. No thought can grasp him. Where then do you grasp him? B'ra'usa deliver. So these are thoughts, but we're calling them meditations because this is not something that someone who's a purely rational person would agree with. I mean, if you can't touch it, if you can't put a formula around it, it has no reality. You can't put any formula around this menorah. This menorah and these lights are coming from a place way beyond formularity, way beyond graspability, way beyond intellect. Listen to that part of you.
Yeah. I think someone pointed this out to me, or maybe I heard it in a shiur somewhere. I don't even remember. But first, the physical fire, the flame, right? When you take one flame and you transfer it to another, and then to another and to another, the original flame that's lighting, let's say, like for example, the shamash that's lighting all the candles. That original flame does not, what's it called?
Doesn't get diminished.
It does not get diminished.
Not
Meaning
diminished.
that's singularity in multiplicity. This fire that's going from the shamash to the other candles, the shamash itself is not diminished. Meaning any other time, like let's say if I'm drinking from this cup, if I drink from the cup doesn't stay full, doesn't stay at the same level every time I take a sip from it. Every time I take a sip from it, the water goes down. But with candles, with fire, it's different. It's that when you light something else, that in itself could light something else, and the original flame is not diminished.
So that's another part of the story.
And that's individuality feeding into multiplicity, and then each of these flames can act as their own, like lighting other.
Absolutely.
It goes along with like mitzvahs, and it talks about it in Tanya, that when you learn or when you do a mitzvah with another person,
Right.
it ends up being two nefesh kisses against one
One
nefesh
nefesh
bahamis. But if you do an avera, it's one nefesh
right.
bahamis because the nefesh bahamis is selfish. But when you're together, when you do a mitzvah with somebody else or you're passing it on, you don't diminish. You actually increase.
That's individuality.
And let's
Yeah.
not forget the simple story that the lights are telling. The story of the overpowering quality of Torah over the Greek ideology. The eternal power of Torah. That in every culture that we've been in, there's been an ideology which has wanted to squelch, extinguish the Torah or. Torah is a light. And think about that story. So there are a lot of stories that you can tell yourself, which is listening and telling as you look. Achine ba'emes, back to our mimer. The line begins, if you're looking at it, lahagdil es ha'ava shalamata. So our contemplation, meditation that we did tonight and that we'll do again Thursday night and through all the week, draws down a light from above. That's the arranging of the lights down here below, which Aaron HaKohen did, and then the drawing down from above. Achine ba'emes, in truth, this arousal from below, you should know, is Moses Elikim. It's a gift from Hashem, that He created us in such a way that our meditations of our heart can reach Him, and that we have the ability to do these meditations. This itself is a gift from Hashem. umazge v'tachnusa. It's not within the purely natural, I'm injecting the word natural, the purely natural powers of a person to be able to do this. This is supernatural. In the, not in the comic book sense of the word. This is supernatural. It's above nature. Our beings are essentially above nature. In fact, all of reality is really above nature. Nature is just a mask and a implementation of something which is super rational and unnatural, not natural. So this is a gift that's been given us from above, because all the natural powers of a person, and is all the constitutions of natural things, and coming out of that, again, opening up the crack, and coming out of that is the elevation of the lights, getting to a higher plane. You have to get to a higher plane. Because this higher plane is the archetype of which is Aaron HaKohen, who gives power into Knesset Yisroel. He's lighting the lights. He's coming from above to below. To arouse the love. And when did this happen? In the evening, at the time of darkness. So metaphorically, poetically, we could say, if you find yourself, and everybody does, in a time of darkness, find a way of opening up a crack where you're not thinking about how difficult it is, how confused I am, where you put yourself in another space, in a space that's contemplative. Push away the darkness with light, not with more confusion. And this is so he lights up the darkness. Shehu midas erev, which is Laila, the attribute, the midah, the measure of evening and darkness, v'chaysha, mitzad atzmai, which a person can get into on his or her own. She'ein boy or, where there is no light. I think everybody has pretty much experienced that. If you've lived more than 3 years.
What?
A state
With
of
darkness.
what you describe, a state of darkness, where at nighttime, when you feel on your own and alone and there is no light. Aval midas baiker, whereas the midah of morning, sun's coming up. Right? Sun's coming up. Shehu midas Avraham, which is the midah of Avraham. He's the ish chesed. Ish chesed. Kamashikosa b'yashkem Avraham b'baiker. Avraham got up in the morning. And there's an interesting, I've seen this in a couple places, but what did he do? He got up in the morning
And he saddled
his chamor.
Yes, his donkey.
What's chamor? What's the Hebrew
Gashmi.
guys?
Material.
Huh?
Flamer is mortar.
Material.
Material, the material world. He saddled
Right,
the materiality.
right.
He got a hold of it, took a hold of it, and used it for Gedusha. He saddled his donkey. And that's the idea of arranging everything, bringing from above to below, finding that place in yourself where you could say to yourself, hey, I got to get on another plane here. I got to get, this stuff is going on, but I got to get on another plane. What are you guys looking at?
Nothing.
Okay?
I'm looking to see if I have any.
V'hine ma zu ha'adam. Now, mi ze ha'adam sheyagia ad halon. So here's a question that you want to do. Who can reach this? Who can do this? Sheyagia Allah b'chines Aaron ha'elyon, that you'll get this metaphorical, archetypal Aaron HaKohen, so an ability to light your lights. Who is that? Achu alidei Torah mitzvahs. How do you do it? Through Torah and mitzvahs. Look, we're learning here Torah. We're learning here a process. Happens to be Chanukah related. We'll learn the same process related to every day of the week and every Yom Tov. The same process. How to bring yourself, and if we come, we're starting the Tanya again, which is really all about this. How to take the world of materiality and confusion which it gives birth to, and see beyond it, listen to a story that's deeper than it. And this is through putting yourself in the mind frame, the paradigm of Torah and mitzvahs. Ki ner mitzvah, it says, ner mitzvah v'Torah or, right? A candle is a mitzvah. Remember our candle, right? The wax doesn't seem to have anything in it. The mitzvah. And sometimes we feel that way. The mitzvah doesn't have anything in it. The mitzvah is just another thing I have to do. Just like a piece of wax. What meaning does it have to me? So you should know that, again, the principle is that, like that dirt, that piece of stone that Mo has put on the table, it keeps sitting in front of me, and I keep looking at this, right? And I mean, guys didn't hear this beautiful thing that Mo, who's sitting over there quietly, said at the beginning of the class, that he has a rock. We have here a rock on the table, which the rock in the earth, a rock. It's a piece of concrete.
You want to show it to the class?
Concrete, right here. Piece of concrete. See it?
Okay.
See it?
Okay,
Piece of
got it.
concrete.
Yeah, thank you. Thank
So Mo began by saying, I'm sorry, I don't want to embarrass you, so I'll
You're
say
not.
that
I'm thick-skinned.
we know that the Torah says us that if a person treads on a piece of dirt and doesn't say Torah, so the piece of dirt will scream, what a nerve you have to walk on me, to tread on me without saying Torah or without being immersed in the Torah. What a chutzpah it is. So this piece of concrete, whatever it looks like more concrete than an actual rock. I don't know. Came from when they made a major renovation in the Rebbe's house. Mo took a piece of this as an example of this piece of rock heard a lot of Torah. This piece of rock was exposed to a lot of Torah. So what you're saying now, and here I want to tell you a short. I'll try to make it short. Story that's a famous story, but you may not have heard it. That we just came from Yutes Kislev, and Yutes Kislev, as you all know, probably is the revelation of the Alter Rebbe. Now, the revelation, the Alter Rebbe was accused of a capital crime. He was sentenced to death for violating laws in Tsarist Russia. But as he sat in prison, the Baal Shem Tov and the Mezritcher Magid visited him. And they visited him in a body, even though these two had passed away. And they visited him, and he asked them, should then he change his tactics and not be so aggressive about spreading Chassidus? And they said no, on the contrary. So when the Alter Rebbe was in a situation when one of the other Talmidim of the Magid was with him, they saw a piece of the Magid's Torah in the dirt, covered by mud. And the other Talmud of the Magid, not the Rebbe, said to him, you see the negativity. This Torah has to be. You keep your Sforim clean. You can't let a piece of Torah be in the mud. So the Alter Rebbe told him. I don't remember the name of that other Talmud of the Magid. The Alter Rebbe said, "Let me tell you a parable. There was a king whose son, the prince, was very, very sick, and no doctor could heal him. They tried everything, and one day, an idea came into the head of one of the doctors that if you crush a particular jewel in the crown and put that in some water, I think this will help." Now, the first thought was, how can you take a crown, the crown jewel of the crown jewels, and crush it and have him eat it? So the Alter Rebbe said, this is the story of Chassidus, that it has to come down, down, down. It's meant to be in the dirt. It's meant to be crushed and stepped on, because it contains in it something, because it comes down so low, it contains something very, very high. So this is the notion of that the mitzvahs are drawn down, the makom gavaya ma'od naila. The mitzvahs, they look to be simple things, as I said earlier, fill in a candle, whatever it is, but you should know that just like that broken piece of dirt, which happened to be a crown jewel, can sink in the mud or in this case, be put in liquid and then put on the tongue and eaten or swallowed by the prince, has tremendous powers, so the mitzvahs. And that's why mitzvahs are not part of the world of understanding, like a rock. Nothing to talk about, because they come from a place so high that there's nothing to talk about. So there's no understanding. Kamashal Hashemin, and he uses now, of course, the oil. the olive oil. She'ein nichnasim b'panemius, that the olive oil is not something that comes into panemius, nafsham, into your soul. Remember, oil is shemen. Shemen is 8. 8 is hovering above 7. So oil has this quality that it's not drawn into the panemius of things. It hovers above it. You put oil on the lettuce, on the salad. It gives a taste, but it doesn't disappear and get absorbed into it. It always stays oily. So oily oil doesn't get drawn in panemius. It's a transcendent. It's a makif. But that's why it can give such great flavor, or in our case, flame, to something which appears to be inanimate, like a piece of wax. Is makif. The oil is makif on everything from above. As it says, Sum tosem alech hamelech, you should put upon yourself a king. Again, the king doesn't rule by having person-to-person encounters with everybody in the kingdom. He rules from afar. And the more afar he is, the more awesome he is. And the more awesome he is, the more we have love or fear of the king. So his awesomeness, his distance from us, is a factor in our appreciating what he really is. So very, very far away. So the king is far away. Hamashal al ima, he rules over his people, not with his people. V'hu gavea aleihem, and he's very high over them. V'heim oisim ratzoin, they believe tam b'das, and the people do his will without any reason. You don't have to understand. In democracy, we try to understand everything, but it's also ununderstandable anyway. But at the same time, the kingship rules by the fact that there's a decree. So we rule it without, we perform the rules of the king, in this case the mitzvahs, not because we really understand them, b'litan v'das, but the way we perform them, the way they're meant to be performed, is because we feel and know in our heart that they come from the place which is beyond understanding. Not that the place which is lower than understanding, but
it's like a leap
higher
of
than
faith.
understanding. Huh?
It's like a leap
Like
of faith.
a leap of faith. But here faith informed hopefully with some feeling. Yeah, we'll just finish this up. So there's no understanding, right? Ki mitzvahs hamelech hu v'leiv malachim. There's a pasuk. The commandments of the king are in the heart of the king, and in the king, ein cheker of hasoga. You can't reach the ends of understanding him. Shaburim mitzavu, for which we were commanded. Rak mikol mokim hu al derek mashal ke'odem shetefes es hamelech be'echad me'avorov. So when you grasp a mitzvah. When you grasp a mitzvah, you hold on to that piece, piece of matzah. You hold whatever mitzvah you want to hold on to in your head. When you grab it, what you're grabbing is like grabbing the limb of a king. You may not see the king, but you're grabbing one of his limbs. And in doing so, you're drawing the king to you. And so, when you draw the king toward you by pulling his garment, well, you're actually drawing him, and you're drawing the life forces which is within him. And so the pasuk says, his right hand embraces me. And what is the right hand? The right hand is the 248 limbs of the king, which are the 248 mitzvahs. And through drawing down the mitzvahs, if you draw down his mitzvahs, which are his limbs, so you automatically draw him down himself in his glory, and in his singularity. Should we stop? We have a little. I have one more little piece if you want for another 5-10 minutes.
Can we do that little piece?
Yeah,
we'll do
let's
this
do
little
it.
piece.
Let's do it.
The little piece is on the next page. And because it's a sum up. It's a sum up. On page, what's the page number? Lamed Dalet. There's an arrow there. So with this we have hopefully got some heart arousal to listening to what the story of Chanukah is. The plain story is Shetamu Hashmini. The Greeks, they made impure all the oil, Shebehechel. So in lay terms, that would be slandered the Torah, created a culture in which belief in God, as opposed to the gods, but belief in God and adherence to his ways was silly, and if not something to be jailed for. So they because the Torah or the light of Torah, which comes from the oil, which is transcendent, they made that all impure. The oil in the heichel, in the temple. Mitzad tagvuras chochmas the klippa. How do they do it? Through the overpowering power at the time of the moment of the chochma of the other side, the chochmas of klippa. Again, as I said at the beginning of the class, kind of not unlike today, and not unlike most of the times that we've lived in. Notice we Jewish people in our history, the klippa of Mitzrayim, the klippa of Iran, the klippa of Purim time, etc. So there's a wisdom, but it's called the wisdom of klippa, the wisdom of the other side. That's why they wanted us to forget your Torah, God's Torah. So to overcome that, we have to draw. Here's another way of listening to the story of the oil, the story of the lights. We have to draw down a level which is higher than Chochmah of Kedusha, which is the Shemin, which is the oil, which is the 8th level called the Makifim, the transcendent level. This is the cruse of oil that was found, which was sealed with the seal of the Kohen Gadol, a great level of kindness. And since it's transcendent, therefore, again, you'll find this principle over and over again. Since it comes from the transcendent, the highest level, it's able to descend down into the lowest levels. The Hadlik.
One second, just tying together with what we've been learning the last 2 and 3 and 4 weeks. So if the oil is the maki, the oil is the quality of Leah, and the candle is the quality of Rachel.
Very nice.
Very nice. Sounds good. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Say it again. What was
Bringing
it?
the
Very
feminine
good.
into it. Very nice.
Very nice.
Say it again. What was it? The candle is what?
The candle is Rachel. The candle is where the action is, and the wick. That's where
Right.
the action
Okay.
takes
And what's
place,
Leah?
right? Leah is the domain in the metaphor. She's the
She's the
maki,
oil.
she's thought and Rachel is speech. Or she's up in the clouds, and Rachel's down to earth.
Right.
Right. Exactly. Good. So we bring down we light the lights down here below, and the oil gives them light because it comes from such a high place. And in our days, now it goes to a second thought, and in our generations, Shein Beis Hamikdash Kayim, where there is no Beis Hamikdash that's in front of us. In the Beis Hamikdash, where you see in the Beis Hamikdash, the Neros, the candelabra, had only 7 lights. And this is from the level of the 7 shepherds. And there the 7 was revealed. Now, as the flip side of this, which is the side we express that the higher it is, the lower it falls.
Right.
So the lower things fall, the farther we get, the more we need to draw down
From a higher place.
from the higher places.
Right.
We need to draw down the makif. Okay. You go to the next bracket. That level of makif is called soivid kolomi. We've come across this word before. That level which transcends all worlds. Soivid kolomi. Shalamayla mihistal shulis.
One more time.
That transcendent level is called, in the language of Kabbalah, soiviv kol olmin, the light which encompasses all worlds. Soiviv, soiviv, sovev, like a donut.
Oh, like the
Thinking of
okay.
Chanukah,
Sivuv.
sivuvu,
Or a dreidel, so
or a
we
dreidel,
Sivuv.
or a dreidel,
Sivuv is a donut.
spinning,
Sufganiyah.
seguno, the
Sufganiyah.
dreidel,
Oh my gosh,
the dreidel, thank you for straightening out. The
Okay. I
dreidel.
thought I was hearing that. Okay.
Yeah.
Sivivon is a dreidel and Sufganiyah
That's
is a
why. I mean,
donut.
here's the secret of the dreidel, by the way. There's a whole lot written about the secret of the dreidel. We're just talking so far about the secret of the lights, right? We could,
Right.
will be after Hanukkah. But in any case, the dreidel. There's a lot. When you go chabad.org and just Google dreidel secrets, and you'll find a lot.
Okay.
Okay. So in a time, as we were saying, in the time that's so low, we have to bring from so high. which is the light of Soivev, surrounding, transcending all worlds.
That's why we have 8
Shalamayim
lights.
Histalshalos, which is higher
Right.
than the normal
No.
order of things. And that will bring what's the Pasuk says, you light up my darkness. The Hein Neiros the Chanukah. And these are the lights of Hanukkah.
These are the.
These are the lights of Hanukkah.
There's a song.
And another
is it
little
really?
bracket, Ukeinin Tefilas,
You know the
Rachanina
song.
Vendosa.
Right.
He drew from transcendence lights the Hapek Hateva to transform nature. He was able to bring miracles down into the world. So if you want a miracle,
You know the
it is a
song?
miracle, right, Hanukkah? Listen to the lights. They come from Shemin. They come from the transcendent level that needs to adhere to the wick. We need to draw that down into ourselves. And this, in the last bracket I have, is Bechinas Mashiach. That's what Mashiach does. Draws down from the transcendent into the Panemius. And so should it be.
I wanted to add, by the way, to what we were saying before about Rachel and Leah.
Yeah.
Because you had mentioned before that when you do this, you get Tiferes. Right, when you combine them together, which is Yaakov. Whatever. I just wanted like that little tidbit of like the whole connecting into the previous weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the Chesed and Gevura, and then Yaakov was Tiferes.
Right. Right, and that's Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Chesed, Avram, Gevurah, Yitzchak, Yaakov,
Right.
Tiferes. And that's why he's the perfect match for Rachel.
And Leah.
Particularly
Right,
Rachel.
particularly Rachel.
Particularly Rachel.
So we were saying a point over here, but I think that I just want to like bring it home with this part. Because we don't have a Beis HaMikdash now, which in the times of the Beis HaMikdash there were 7 lights.
We were okay with 7.
Right, we were okay with 7, but that's why we need to draw down a stronger light now because we don't have a Beis HaMikdash, so that's why we have 9 lights instead of 7. We have, well, if you're saying 7,
The
7
Shamash.
includes the Shamash, so 9 includes the
No, there
Shamash.
were 7
Wait, did I just hear 9?
Yeah, I'm saying no because in the menorah and the Beis HaMikdash there were 6 and then the Shamash. That's why I'm saying 9
The
because we
Shamash
have
is
8 and then the Shamash.
Right.
Right. But we
So if
don't-
you're gonna say 7, you're including the Shamash in
In
there.
the base of Mikdash, it was 6 plus the shamash, and then ours
Yeah.
But
it's 8 plus the
it wasn't the
shamash.
Shamash. It was the middle light. It
Yeah.
was counted as one.
Okay, so
The
7,
Shamash
and then
is
ours
just
is
an
8
extra
plus.
thing. That's why it's on a different level. The Shamash in the middle light in the 7 menorah was on the same level. It's one of
Not
the
in the
7.
Rambam's menorah.
The Rambam's menorah, the temple, you have the Shamash sticking out above.
think
In
so.
the middle. No?
Well, look, I don't
I'm
think
curious
so.
to look actually.
I don't think so. But there was one of the 7. The Shamash that we
I'm
use
gonna
is
look
not
right now,
is
one
not
second.
one of the 8.
Hang on, I'm gonna
It's
take
a
a look.
Shamash. It's used to light.
Unrelated.
No, it is because this is a picture of the Rambam's. I'm using it from Rachel's things. This is a picture of the Rambam's menorah from the Beis Hamikdash.
Right.
The
But it's in the same row. I get it is a little higher. It's true. But it's
But Aaron Cohen used the shamash to light the other.
what are you saying? You light only 6 and then stuck that in?
We light. Well, yeah.
Okay, if I may,
But that's why I say 9 because it's the same equivalence
plus
to
the
the 7.
Yeah,
Right.
but 9 is never mentioned.
But then why do we say 7 and not 6?
Well, Elisa, what do you want to say?
okay, the more important
question.
thing than, I haven't heard 9 either, but the more important thing than the number is that we are striving to be a son.
Sarah Tyberg says hello.
We are striving to bring out within ourselves and within everyone around us the light, to bring it down and to bring those actions up, which means we need to be a shamash.
Right, like Aaron Cohen. We need to be the lamp lighter. The lamp lighter. Which is
And
the
the
shamash.
number
right?
does not matter nearly as much.
Yeah. It's a good drush. The shamash is the one you light the lights with. He's the lamp lighter. That's Aaron Cohen. We'll do a little look at that Besa Mikdash. Pretty cool, I thought. That one in the middle is counted as one of the 7. Anyway, the main thing is to have a freilich of Hanukkah,
Amen.
right? Have a freilich of Hanukkah and know that our happiness, because we have to be happy. We always have to be happy.
See,
but
look.
particularly in a holiday like Hanukkah,
Be happy.
be happy, right? We have to be happy.
make a great
Don't worry,
menorah.
be happy. Because happiness brings healing. And we need a
Are we
lot of
learning
healing.
next week?
Are we learning next week? Oh, it's a good question. I hadn't thought about that. I don't know where I'll be. Let's stay tuned to Chassidus at K or other WhatsApps, and we'll discuss it. Good point. Okay.
Okay. So,
Do,
okay.
do you want to learn next week, or everybody's?
Yes.
You do.
Yes. That's the whole message of Hanukkah.
All right. We'll stay tuned. Okay, guys.
Okay, let me
And see you later.
Thank you.
Good night.
enough over here.
Good night.